All right, we are back once again. Another edition of the Final Score. I'm your host, Jason Brown, and I am joined with my man, the myth, the legend, Flip Mozzie, back in the building. We're finally getting this thing going, trying to figure out how it's going to work with me and Flip here all off season. Finally got some scheduling to work at. We're here. We're going to jump in and talk a little bit about what's going on with this Vikings schedule and really anything else we feel like talking about here in the next few minutes. But Flip, my man, how you doing? How you been? What's going on with you?
I'm doing well, man. I'm ready to chop it up. We got the schedule release. We're on the other side of the draft. A lot of people may think there's not too much to talk about at this point in the offseason, but Kevin O'Connell's talking. We're going to prove y'all wrong. We got plenty of things to say. I hope.
Well, I got a question for you.
Okay.
Because something that you said fairly consistently, last season, before last season, was that this coming season was definitely going to be worse than the season we just had.
You're already coming at me straight with
I'm not coming at you. I'm just looking. Now we got the schedule. We already knew which teams we were gonna face off. And first place schedule, you're gonna play some tough opponents in there. With everything that you've seen this offseason, with the way the team's coming together, the moves that they've made, Brian Flores, I would assume, we don't know, but we assume is going to be an upgrade over Ed Donatel. The players that we have coming back, you got Lewisine, Booth, adding more players into the secondary in this draft as well. You still holding firm on the thought that, this season is going to be worse just because there's so much more unproven in terms of the players that are going to have to be on the field.
Yeah, I think it's interesting comparing to last season because there was so much talk about how the team performed last season in terms of win-loss record compared to advanced stats, which some of us like, some of us don't like. I think a lot of people think that the Vikings record in one-score games is something that cannot be maintained, but there's no way to really learn that until we get to the season, until we get in those games and we see if this team performs similar to last year's team in those one-score games. I think what we can do now is talk about the roster and how the roster last year looks compared to this year. Personally, I think that there's a lot of good reason for optimism, people coming back from injuries, some key losses, but it seems like they have covered them up well or have a future plan going forward at each position. And then, like you said, Brian Flores, the coaching. Last year, the Vikings bet on coaching. They said Kevin O'Connell was going to be better than Clint Kubiak, and I think they were largely proven right by it. I think you can expect, it's fair to expect Kevin O'Connell to continue to improve in his second year as head coach of the team. And Brian Flores compared to Ed Donatel, I mean, if you don't think that Flores is going to be an upgrade, then, I mean, what are we even doing here? We gotta have faith in that.
All right, so we're putting our faith in Brian Flores. And Nick Olson, when he was on, he had something similar to say. He felt like Flores might have been one of the biggest additions this offseason, player or otherwise, because of what he's been able to do, the track record that he has, and everything that he's shown in this league so far. And I think that, the thing that's been consistent about Brian Flores, he's really gets in there, gets hands-on, and coaches guys up. And we got a lot of young talent that needs to be coached up now, especially in the defensive secondary. And that is where Flores has excelled, is where he shined throughout his career. And so there is reason for optimism with all of that. But let's jump into it. Let's just start to talk about, we see the roster. We know what it is. O'Connell's talking about the mini camp. I love some of the things that he's saying in there around not doing what all of us do during this time of the year, calling us out, but also calling the coaches, calling themselves out as well, which is don't put too much stock in what happens right now in mini camp. In part because he was saying that players aren't always going to be at their best now. There's so much information being thrown at them. There's so much they're trying to process, so much they're trying to absorb that from his mind, it's give guys a chance to kind of improve, give them the opportunity to improve. One of the things that I like that he said was like really putting it on them, letting them know that they're going to be professionals now And what are you going to do to show that you want to be here and make this team and be a contributor when the games actually start to matter? And so as we start to think about things for the Vikings, think about the games that they have that are going to count in the future here. When you looked at the schedule, was there anything that really like stood out for you that you were like, okay, that stretch is going to be crazy, or oh man, like they might be able to really get themselves into a groove over this stretch? Or are you looking at like, oh wow, like a lot of folks we've been bred to be pessimistic is like, oh man, this is a really tough schedule. Like it's going to be a long season for us. Like, what are your thoughts with it all?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because we know the opponents, right? We know they're playing a first place schedule. They're going to have a lot of top matchups on their games against first place teams, playing the defending Super Bowl champs. We knew all that. What pops out to the schedule is I don't really see a lot of ebb and flow. I see, spots on the schedule that might be easy. We could go in the run looking at, week 8 through week 11. Hopefully we can string together some wins there after we play the 49ers. But the early season slate has 3 tough matchups at Philadelphia in week 2 versus Kansas City in week 5 and versus the San Francisco 49ers in week 7. I think that kind of is the tough stretch of the schedule, with a caveat that like 7 games isn't really a stretch. That's like almost half of the year. So it's nice that these tough games are spread out and we don't have to play Kansas City right after playing Philadelphia. We don't have to play, Cincinnati right after playing San Francisco. So I like the early season stretch. I think it's something where they're going to be challenged early on. It's something where you're trying to fight through to week 8 again, and then hopefully gain some steam and make a playoff run against primarily NFC North opponents on the back half of the year.
So you're looking at this thing. That first Thursday night against Philadelphia, like that's
brutal.
not fun.
Right.
That's not fun.
That's the toughest game on the schedule, right?
Yes, that jumps out right away. Like you got the Bucks, and then like just immediately follow that up with the Thursday night. Like that's a tough stretch right there. That's like that's tough coming right out the gate. I'm looking at it, and I don't know. There's some teams in there that like the media loves. Like the Chargers are a part of what we have a tough schedule. Like I don't know. That feels like a game that maybe we would be able to steal. The Broncos, Russell Wilson seems to have forgotten how to play football. Like, which one are we going to get? Is Russ going to be back? Because that could end up being a tougher game than maybe we're thinking about it right now. Mm-hmm. And then like the Saints, everyone loves the Saints. The betting market seems to love the Saints. And so like that's one, like defensively, they're a strong team. Offensively, what are they going to be? That's another game that I'm looking at that's kind of a coin flip. But Flip, for me, the game that I'm most excited about, because the game that I'm going to be at, it's that Falcons game in Atlanta.
Okay, rise up.
We're going down. I'm gonna keep working on JR and Miles. You should come through too. CTP in Atlanta, roll through, make a bit of noise. At that point, you can take over the dome. The Falcons fans, they're not gonna be there if the game's not any good. So we got to come through, make some noise, and represent.
No, just got to get them to Vegas, man. It's gonna be cold up there in Canada, December 10th. Come on down to the desert, watch the Vikings play on the west side for a bit.
I'm down. It doesn't take much convincing to get me in Vegas. So there doesn't take much at all to get me down to Vegas. So I've actually forgotten that's after the bye week.
Mm-hmm.
That's an interesting stretch for them too, coming out of the bye though. You got at Las Vegas, at Cincinnati, and then the Lions, Packers, Lions. I actually haven't asked you this, so I'm going to go ahead and ask you now. The Lions, they are getting all the love, all the hype. Everyone expects the Lions to take another step. And I know it's something that we talked about in the group chat, and people were kind of like, the Lions and their culture and all of these things. And it was kind of annoying you because in your like they hadn't done anything yet.
Yeah.
Now thinking about like the Lions, the Vikings, kind of how they match up, what are your thoughts on where the Lions are at? And like where the Vikings are when you're thinking about how these two teams match up?
I like how Detroit ended the year. I think they won 8 in a row to finish the year. And I think they were very aggressive this offseason, which is always going to create offseason buzz. The Lions won the offseason. I'm kind of the ilk that does not care about winning the offseason. You can make all the flashy picks you want. At the end of the day, you're still rolling Jared Goff out there for 17 games, 18 games, 17 games. And I'm okay with that. It's going to be tough. We split with them last year. I think they're much better, but I'm still waiting to see how their culture handles sustained success, how they play when expectations are high. Because when they were going on that 8-game win streak last year, it was great, but expectations were not high. Now they've got 4 or 5 primetime games. Expectations are high. We've seen Jared Goff in some very competitive situations. We know there's some issues there with suspensions on their side of the ball. But by all means, I think it's going to be the most difficult matchup right now in the division. But I love that it's late in the season. I love the fact that, either it's going well, sure, maybe the Lions will be 12, 13-0 when we first play them. But in the NFL, it's going to be choppy, and we'll see how they handle it. I think I've seen enough from Minnesota over years, and not just the coach, but the players, those one-score games. Statistically, maybe it's a fluke, but I know this team does not quit. From the coach to the players that have been there for some time, it's going to be a situation where they're expecting this. They're not taking Detroit for granted. And I think that ultimately means that, yeah, we should be expected as defending NFC North champs to win the division again.
Oh, there it is, because that was going to be my next question for you right now. Betting markets say Detroit. Are you putting your money on Minnesota?
I would love – I love betting markets, like Kevin O'Connell says, in mid-May, right after they made flashy draft picks. They had a lot of draft picks, great, but they spent them on a running back. They spent them.
I mean, to be fair, though, the betting markets have basically said Detroit was the favorite to win the North, basically from the moment the season ended. And one could make the argument that in the totality of the games we played last year, the Lions were the better team. Like, you could make the argument that they outplayed the Minnesota Vikings. So I guess, yes, we split them. But like, do we really feel like, Jared Goff still is their quarterback? There's also an argument to be made that he played better than Kirk in some stats when you're looking at them last year. So like, I don't know. It seems like you are very much looking past the Lions and have just locked us in as we're winning the North again. And I'm trying to understand, like, how is there so little respect for this team that played us so well last season?
I don't think there's minimal respect. I have tons of respect for the Lions. I think they're fun to watch. I think what I'm saying is they've got to basically come off an 8-game winning streak. No target was on their back. And now 2023 for Detroit is going to be very, very different than 2022 was. Even in 2022, the expectations were high to start the year. They had a new energetic coach. People were raving about their culture from Hard Knocks. They were the darling of the media's eye, and they completely botched the start of their season. I think they started 1-6, 1-7 to start the season. So we've seen eyeballs on Detroit again, and that's their battle this year, is to prove that they have conviction to win where the stakes are high. And that's something where I've seen Minnesota do it.
Okay. All right. And so Detroit coming down. It's also crazy to me thinking about it. Of all the years that, like, it's been us and Green Bay at the end of the season, doesn't it feel a little weird that, like, now the big, like, matchups that the schedule makers, the odds makers are kind of thinking are going to be what the division comes down to? It's us and the Lions, and Green Bay is kind of an afterthought. So as we, I guess, could kind of continue the tour through the North, I guess, what are your thoughts on where Green Bay is going to be given everything that's gone on for them in this offseason? Rodgers is out. Love is in. Crazy contract where it seems like he's almost betting against himself, but guarantees himself some money, but doesn't get the 5th year. Yeah, what are your thoughts on where Green Bay is going to be at, that team, and how you expect them to show up when we're thinking about, the division and who might win it next year?
I think Green Bay has a competitive roster, especially on the defensive side of the ball. I think to count them out right now is purely a bet on Jordan Love. What we've seen on an NFL football field hasn't been great, but you can't let me sit here a year after Jared Goff just went off and all of a sudden is the best quarterback in the NFC North, and not tell me that Jordan Love or even Justin Fields can't improve to make the entire NFC North competitive. So yeah, there's a ton of upside with Green Bay. I think they have time, so maybe it doesn't click for them in 2023, but a win against the Vikings can give them a lot of extra juice this year. So we've got to hold serve.
Okay. And then obviously last, I was going to say, but not least, but like last, but definitely least, the Bears. You're talking about hype. You're talking about darlings. I don't know that there's any player who's done less on the field who has more just love in the social media streets than Justin Fields. But it seems they're at a place now where there's almost gonna be no more excuses for them. They're doing what you're supposed to do, getting the man protection, getting them weapons, and now it's time to show and prove. So as you're thinking about Justin Fields in the North, where are you expecting things to land with him? Do you believe the hype? Are the Bears kind of the new Lions? Are they the new ascending teams in the North with the Packers falling off with their quarterback leaving, and maybe the Vikings in a transition phase with still being good, but like trying to figure out what's next? Are the Bears a team that you're worried about as you think maybe not just about this year, but the future of the division?
Yeah, I really think that with the GM changes that have happened in the NFC North over the past 3 years, Ryan Pace in Chicago, Brad Holmes in Detroit, and Kwesi from Minnesota, you're just going to have really competitive rosters. You're going to have innovative thinking in roster building, and you're going to see each of these teams build on a timeline. So, the up arrow, I'd say the up arrow is definitely where it is for Chicago right now, heading in 2023. Everybody should expect the Lions to take a step forward. Everybody should expect the Bears to take a step forward. Now, is it enough to be competitive for the crown? No, but I don't think, while expectations may be higher, I don't think they're that high where they're defining success only as an NFC North championship. I think it is about making improvement. And again, what I think we miss with the Vikings so often is that this is year 2 for Kwesi and Kevin too. So we're all hyped about year 2 for the Lions, year 2 for the Bears. We should be able to be hyped about year 2 for the Vikings too.
Okay. All right. So with all of that, we've kind of talked about the schedule a little bit. We've talked about the landscape in the division.
Yeah.
Flip is picking us right here on this day, mid-May. Vikings are winning the division. It's been called. Lock it, book it. Last question for you about your betting odds. Vikings win total set at 8.5. First, before I give you whether you're going over under, do you think that's a fair range for them to be in, given where they performed last year, what's happened in this offseason, where we're at right now? Does 8.5 feel fair to you?
Yeah, well, let me just think through this. I think we talked about the 4 difficult games we have against, Kansas City, San Francisco, Philadelphia, Cincinnati. I think a pessimist is going to, or a betting man, whoever the analytics people are, they're probably going to favor Detroit over us at that point in the season. That's 6 losses right there.
Well, let's run through it then. Let's just quickly run through it then. Buccaneers. Okay. Buccaneers. What are we doing? It's a win. Okay.
Yeah.
Short week, Philadelphia.
We can go 1-1 after that.
Okay. Coming back around, Chargers.
Win.
All right. Week after that, Panthers.
Win.
Okay. Following up the Panthers with the Chiefs.
Let's go. I'm going to go. We lose the next 3.
Oh. So you thinking we're taking a loss to the Chiefs? We're losing to the Bears.
Yeah. Surprise upset in Chicago. Everybody singing Justin Fields' praises. We didn't beat him by that much last year. So.
All right. We're losing to the Bears and we're losing to the Niners. Okay. So we're coming back around here. Vikings,
3-4.
Okay.
Here's the run.
Okay. So Packers game's a win.
Winning in front of Jayson in Atlanta.
Okay. We're beating the Falcons. I need that. Saints.
We're not scared about the Saints.
Okay, so we're beating the Saints. Okay, Broncos.
Not scared about the Broncos. Russell
Okay,
Wilson is,
back to the Bears. Do we get revenge?
I think we get revenge.
Okay, so we get revenge against the Bears. And now it's that next kind of weird stretch coming off the bye. Vegas.
Yeah. So Vegas, I think we can say a win against Vegas, a loss
Okay.
Cincinnati.
Okay. Loss against. Okay, now it is. Here's the stretch. The Lions, Packers, Lions.
Yeah. So I'm going to say win, loss here.
Win. Okay. So you're strongly taking the over. You have us in with 11 wins next season.
11-6.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That feel good to you?
That feels good to me. I really don't. I don't see what we'd have to lose 3 more games in that. I can't see 3 more surprise losses there without saying, hey, maybe we upset the Eagles. Maybe we beat the Chiefs or the 49ers. 49ers, we don't even know who their quarterback is. So I think 11 wins should be the expectation.
Boom. I love it. 11 wins, repeating the North. Any other bold predictions from you? I might have to go and run some of these slips in on DraftKings when we get offline here. Anything else that you got?
Well, I told you the bold predictions about the sweeps, or the streaks. I told you, I think losing to Chicago is going to be a bold prediction. I think winning 5 in a row going into the bye week, and 2 after that, that's pretty bold prediction. So I think that's where we got to have our heads at. Let me ask you, Jason.
Yeah, do it.
Where you at? Where you at on the Vikings right now?
I'm strangely hopeful about the Vikings, probably more so than I've been in a little while, just because it feels like there's a plan to build something that is building beyond just staying employed for another season, which is what it kind of felt like there towards the end of the Spielman-Zimmer campaign, is that Rick was just it felt off of just plugging the super obvious hole for next season. And that was it. That was the hope. And just kind of keeping us in a middling phase all the time. And so it's hopeful now because you can see a plan. You can see the team making smart decisions, investing in weak link systems, bringing in players, taking shots to try to beef up a secondary, bringing in someone, a get like Flores is huge in my opinion. And even just the way that the draft ran from year 1 to year 2, you could just see an increased level of comfort for everybody in terms of how they work together, Kwesi's decision making, the way he was speaking about the decisions that they made after the fact. Kevin O'Connell, everyone is more comfortable. Like you said, it's the second go around. There's experience to be gained and all of that. And so, yeah, it feels like things are looking up. Investing in the offense even more so that Kirk can either ball, or if Kirk doesn't ball, the next person that they put in there will be able to perform at a level that is competent, because we know the value of pass catchers on the performance for a quarterback. And so the way the team is being assembled and the focus on, I guess, what I would deem to be the right places, which is the NFL is a passing league. There's no ifs, ands, or maybes about it. But we've also got an offensive line comprised of all first and second round picks, right? You can't say that they're neglecting the trenches. Maybe they're not all good, but there's a foundation on the trenches on that side that has been invested in heavily. And so, yeah, no, I feel good about where the team's going. I'm excited about the season. Feels in many ways yeah, if everything hits, the team can be really, really good. It could also go the other way though. And because we are betting on some outlier type out. We're going to need a lot of young players to hit the field and perform at a high level in the secondary for us to be able to be competent defensively next year. But if that all hits, we could be a really good team. And if it doesn't, okay, maybe we're a little bit closer to being able to get the quarterback who takes over after Kirk, and we don't have to mortgage the entire future to do so. So it's or Kirk just balls and he continues to get paid and we can keep it moving. And that's also an outcome that I'm okay with. So yeah, I'm happy with where the team is at right now. I think that the brain trust has things moving in a good direction. And we'll see what happens when maybe they see some real adversity. They really haven't had to deal with too much of that yet. So if the season does go off the rails, it'll be interesting to see how everyone continues to work together. If it's all like unicorns and butterflies and rainbows and all that, if we do have some of those losing streaks that maybe you predicted. But right now, I think it's we're in a great spot.
There you go. So I'm not crazy. I don't
think you're crazy.
Right.
I don't think you're crazy. I do think, I think where it gets interesting is that obviously anytime you do these exercises in the off season, like, I'm a fan of the team. I think your 11-6 that you put on paper like makes sense. I can see how we get there. I just always it's always in that place where some of these teams that we think are going to be bad are probably going to be a bit better than we are, and everything in the NFL just kind of pulls itself towards the middle. 8.5 feels low to me. It feels low, but I also understand how it got there because the defense was trash, and not even the analytics, because like the analytics, they say that, and like I'd say the Vikings last year are the reason that the analytics probably say those things, because you look at a lot of those close, like the Buffalo game.
Right.
Like we had no like business winning that game, like none whatsoever, like I remember watching that game with Dave and Austin, like what is happening right now? Like we had no business winning that game. You run that 100 times, that is the one that we win,
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting. It'll be fun. It's exciting. Can't wait to see Addison and all the rookies get out there and really start to perform. And it's it's a hopeful time to be a Vikings fan. And
there you go.
Maybe knock on some wood, but like even like the arguments about Kirk and all that stuff, like it's quiet. People generally seem happy in Vikings land, and I love it.
Kirk is going into a year with the same offensive scheme for the first time since he's been in Minnesota. Same offensive play caller, and that I think that's important. He's always said it's important. Now he's getting that wish. So yeah, we can expect upside there.
Yeah, I love it. Well, that's it. That's all.
There you go.
I know your life's about to get hella busy, but we're going to figure this thing out. We're going to get on here in a more regular cadence as we go forward. If you got questions, you got anything you want us to talk about, throw them in the comments of the video. Start pulling these things into future conversations, because if you know anything about Flip and I, we do love to argue with the comments. So if you got something you want to say, throw it in there. Maybe next week we talk about it, we bring it up, and we let you know if we think that what you're saying made some sense, or if you're crazy for saying it. But that's it. That's all. That's the show. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. If you're on YouTube, like and subscribe. If you're not on YouTube, go to YouTube, like and subscribe. And if you're on, listening to the show, the audio only, find your podcast aggregator, give us a 5-star rating there as well. And that's it. We will see y'all next week. Have a good one.
Skol Vikes.